Hey, everybody. It's episode 8 review time. Only 2 episodes left. This episode sets up a lot of things, closes down a lot of things. I think we've probably seen the last of a few of these characters for the season, a few of them forever, because, you know, that's what happens when you die. I guess sometimes characters come back from the dead or from the you think they're dead, but they're not. But most of the time they don't. There was a lot of different things going on in this episode. And like I said, it's going to be the last time we see some of these characters for the season. And it's interesting to think about whether or not we've seen the last of them this season. We know a lot about what's coming in the next episode. I won't spoil that. As usual, we'll hold that for the post-credits discussion. But that said, you know, there's a lot of things we expected to happen this season. And since some of them haven't happened yet, it kind of narrows down when we think they're going to happen, how they're going to happen, how much time they have.
You can probably guess what's coming up even if we don't talk about it. Right.
It's pretty hard to get around some of these things. And it is good, although I don't think this is a spoiler to say. The next episode is 60 minutes long. The final episode is going to be 69 minutes long. The average length is more like 52, 53. Maybe closer to 54, 55 sometimes. But this season, they've been a little shorter.
Yeah.
A lot of them have been more closer to the 50-minute, 52-minute mark. So it's good to see that it's almost 2.5 episodes worth of material over the last 2 episodes. So that's cool. We've still got a lot to look forward to, even though things are wrapping up. And, you know, we've got a couple of different attitudes and beliefs about what's happened in this episode. And some people aren't too happy about it. Some people are. You know, it always goes multiple ways. This isn't a massively popular episode like, say, the Hold the Door episode. The Door, of course, being the title of that one. And that's still the most popular episode of the season. But this season's been really strong overall. And it's maybe had a little bit of a lull as we head into the finale. Not necessarily that it's slower, but it's maybe there's been, you know, when things are being set up, it's hard to have a lot of action and resolution during the setup. Of course, there was a lot of resolution.
I'm okay with that, by the way. I don't look forward to the big action moments of the seasons. I look forward to the deep conversations between characters. Frustrating parts of this episode, I felt like some of the stuff with Arya was hard to swallow, but I did like a lot of stuff with Jaime and Edmure. I thought that was
great.
really good. And once again, I liked the bit with Tyrion and Missandei and Grey Worm trying to connect there. So.
I think there was a lot of underlying themes, a lot of the subtlety in that scene, and we'll definitely have to talk about those things when we get there. Let's start with Arya. That is, in fact, speaking of great acting, maybe this scene didn't have a lot of opportunity for great acting, but it started with fantastic acting. Lady Crane giving her monologue. We see the difference in the monologue. She has now adopted Arya's suggestion to express anger over Joffrey's death, which was really good. And you see how it moved the crowd. I think it moved a lot of the viewing audience as well. It was a really well done scene. And it's funny to see Cersei's wig still in action because Cersei's not wearing it anymore with her short hair.
By the way, it wasn't just that Lady Crane adopted it. It's that the writer,
I guess,
producer,
he would have
whatever,
because he was against it.
Yeah, he was against it. And
not against it.
He came around too.
He was
I wonder how much
changes.
he came around after Lady Crane did whatever to the girl's face. That he's
yeah.
Okay, fine. We'll make some changes here. Put the knife down.
It's like, this is what I'm going to do to you if you don't change my lines. I'm going to cut your face. So yeah, don't mess with Lady Crane. Well, don't worry about it now.
Unless you're the waif.
Yeah, and you can. Yeah, she's harmless now. She's just a body. So yeah, I'm with you. I think that it was a little bit cheap to have Arya's really nasty wound it was still an issue for her. It bled when she jumped, it reopened, and she was able to make use of it to like wipe blood on the wall there to lead the waif into a trap. But still, there was some things that I think it was the way they set it up was they were trying to be too tricky, I think, with setting it up, and some of it didn't work that well, but some of it did, and there's still a lot of positive things to take out of this. For example, I know before we were setting up, you mentioned her jumping down the stairs and rolling and all the fruit and everything getting up. That was really well done. I mean, it was a really well choreographed shot.
Can you imagine how hard it was to put that together? How many people were standing there and having all the fruit set up, and even having that sort of contrast of the orange and the colors with the tan and gray of the streets, but
that might have been a little book nod there. There's a piece of fruit that is a part of the Seven Kingdoms in the books. It's called a blood orange. Okay. And it's just an orange that's red. It's like a grapefruit maybe, and it's part of Dorne. So the orange next to the blood made me think of blood oranges. I have no idea if that was intentional, but that's where my brain went.
It was a couple things. I will say, like maybe a little extra frustration because I felt like I'd figured out what was going on, and it wasn't what I thought. It's like, it wasn't what I thought.
Same. I was very wrong with my predictions.
What I thought was so good. Like, how could they not use my thoughts?
Yeah, I guess sometimes we get disappointed because they didn't do what we think they were going to do, and maybe it isn't fair to criticize a show for not doing what we want them to do, but at the same time, it's they misled us in ways that didn't seem like they resolved them in a realistic way. It's
hard to understand why the things that led us to our theory, why did they do those things?
Yeah.
It's confusing or frustrating, but they at least tried to address, the fact that Lady Crane would be able to deal with this wound. They gave us a line of dialogue.
Yeah, it wasn't nothing. Yeah,
and I also helped justify my mind a little bit by not assuming that moment when she wakes up and a waif is there. That wasn't necessarily the next morning.
Yeah, it could have been.
It might have been a couple weeks that had gone by, and already gone through some healing already.
I buy that. I like that too. That definitely helped a lot because it was an ambiguous amount of time, so you can imagine that it was plenty of time.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to have been a lot of time, but it could have been. And they don't say one way or the other. So you can't say it was just one night. You can't say it was just 2 weeks. We have no idea.
But
it's not like Arya's a young man who we can tell by how much beard growth she's had.
Yeah.
Even that wouldn't tell us entirely. And to me, one of the best things about this whole Arya scene, this whole little wrap up, I've got my Valar Morghulis shirt on, is that like it or love it, it's over. Or like it or hate it, or love it or hate it, it's over. And she's going back to Westeros. That's really cool. That's a really positive thing. We get to see her.
Wait, no, she's going west of Westeros.
Oh, yeah, that's right. She's going to go to this. She's going to become Arya, the navigator, and sail west of Westeros. So she said she's Arya Stark of Winterfell. She's going home. Does that mean literally? Is she going to go straight to Winterfell? Is she'll find that? Maybe,
I'm telling you, Aziz, she's going. The next scene, she's going to show up in a new world. It's gonna be Ellis Island, and Arya looking up the bow of the ship at the Statue of Liberty.
Meanwhile, they'll have to make a new waif Terminator, a T-1000 there with her look. I thought she was looking surprised when she made that look. We saw that look in the trailers. She was surprised, but no, that was I'm coming to get you. I am the evil machine of death. That definitely, I'm not nearly the only one to think of Terminator movies after seeing that scene. And the moment with Jaqen or Jaqen, people have complained about how I pronounce that. It's really hard for me because I have a cat named Jaqen, and I'm not going to start calling my cat Jaqen. I've been calling him Jaqen for 3 years. So he is black and white, by the way, the cat of black and white. So there's a lot to think about as far as where she's going next, whether she's going to go to Winterfell. Well, if this big battle that's fixing to happen in the north between the Boltons and the Starks and their allies, however that goes, let's assume the Stark come out ahead in that. Then maybe Arya arrives to find the north in chaos, but heading in the right direction, but White Walkers coming. Or is she gonna try to scratch some names off her list? Is she gonna try to go for Cersei or Walder Frey? Those are the two names really that she, the Mountain's on her list, but I don't see her being able to take him out so easily. It could be done, but I'm not sure that's the most likely. I think the other two targets are more likely.
So a couple thoughts I have are one is something you might be able to answer. Where would she? Let's just assume she's just trying to get out of there.
Yeah.
First ship she can find, quickest destination across. What would be the most trafficked path between Braavos?
Pretty much where she left from. Something on the East Coast. It could be King's Landing. It could be Gulltown, which is in the Vale. I mean, Braavos, if you look at the map, Braavos kind of comes right over here. You can't see it very well from here. Braavos lines up with the fingers of the top part of the Vale. So if just a straight shot across, and King's Landing is just a bit farther south. There's several ports along there. The main ones being Gulltown and King's Landing. But the show doesn't really pay a lot of attention to that sort of thing. This isn't necessarily a criticism. It's just the way they do it. And they don't feel the need to point out that level of detail, which, I can understand that.
they may not point it out, but they may still be aware of it. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And given that King's Landing is a likely place, it's like it's the capital, it's a big port, it's nearby, right? So, A. B. Another thought that I had that wasn't spoiled or ruined by the way it actually went down as far as the House of Black and White, Jaqen and Arya, is it might have been his mission for her to kill Cersei in the first place, right? Like she gets this sort of set up mission to go kill a fake Cersei. You know? They ask her about who's on your list at one point when they're trying to figure Arya or the girl out. Who's on your list? Okay,
that's true.
Cersei. So it seems justifiable for Jaqen, whoever, to kill Arya here. Like, she broke his rules. He warned her, no third chance. She killed his protege, but lets her go. Maybe he just wants Cersei to die anyway. He knows she's going to go kill. It's kind of like potentially, it might be a win-win for him and or the House of Black and White. If they want Cersei dead, whether someone hired them to kill her, which you can imagine Cersei has plenty of enemies, someone might have done that.
Sure. And the Iron Bank would be one of them potentially, which is, there's not there's no confirmed link between the Iron Bank and the Faceless Men, but they're two of the oldest institutions in Bravos. They're surely aware of each other, and can't imagine that they don't have interactions sometimes. Doesn't mean we're in cahoots, but you certainly can't dismiss the possibility.
If they were in cahoots, who knows what kind of deal they could work out. But default, right, House of Black and White charge for an assassination is 2/3 of your wealth.
Sure.
It's hard to imagine that the
it's true.
Well, they may not give that much. However, I was talking about this to someone else, and they said, well, can the Iron Bank find some beggar on the street and say, hey, go hire the House of Black and White to kill Cersei? And that guy gives him his pants, and the Iron Bank's like, thanks, here's 100 gold pieces.
I gotta say, that theory has been tossed about in the books, amongst book discussion. Not that theory specifically as far as to do with Arya, but the idea that someone could hire the Faceless Men through a proxy to save money. That same old thing seems like a dangerous game to play, but it is an idea that's been tossed around in the fandom before. You wonder how possible it is. They're not easy to lie to.
That's true. Yeah,
you can't just hire some random person. They would sniff out the lie. They're real hard to lie to. So I don't know. That's a dangerous game to play, but it's possible somebody might not realize how hard they are to lie to, and it probably just wouldn't work. But you never know. So there's a lot of possibilities for where Arya could go. Old Town, King's Landing, the Vale, straight to the north.
Hospital.
A hospital. Will we see her again this season? Hard to tell whether or not. Okay, well, we're not going to see her again to the beginning of next season where she pops up somewhere. Maybe she'll be in disguise the first time we see her. She did go into the House of Black and White at the end. Maybe she snatched a face. Maybe she took the face that was in the place of the waves. By the way, that was very messy of her. Like, Jaqen's like, I gotta clean this up. Like, you're supposed to clean these faces off before you stick them on the wall. Come on,
some new protege to clean this up.
Yeah, that's really all it is. Like, we're gonna promise to teach you how to be a badass assassin, but really, we're just gonna make you a janitor. It's like that's a common trope of the master student type movies.
Wax on,
situation. Wax on, wax off. Make them do all their work for them. Yeah, that's the real secret of it all. Become a big, powerful, mysterious master of something, and you'll get plenty of people coming to want to train from you. And that is how you get your place very clean. Path to success, or at least cleanliness. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty cool. That, again, whether you loved or hated or somewhere in between, the wrap up of the House of Black and White, I think it had its moments. I don't know if it's fair to judge it by just this last scene. Over the course of the season, basically 2 full seasons Arya spent there, it has had its ups and downs. A lot of it's been really good. The acting has been solid. Maisie Williams is always really good. And Lady Crane was really good. The play was really good. The different interactions with the actors. So I think it's fair to judge it as a whole, not just based on this last scene. And overall, I think it was good. I will be critical and say I'm not super happy with how it ended, but I am excited for where it's going. And I liked a lot of what came before. So I'm not just going to focus on just this 2% of the whole plot line, which this bit represents. So what's going to happen with Arya in the future? Your guess is as good as ours. We'd love to hear your ideas. By the way, I did mention the Door episode earlier as the most popular episode of the season. However, we got almost as much feedback, questions, reactions, as far as email, Facebook, Twitter, etc., where all the places we get emails, like Patreon as well. And there's been a big response to this episode, really big.
Oh, to this episode?
Yeah, more than I might have expected, more than I would have guessed. So yeah, that's good stuff. I think so. A lot of you out there wanted to hear our thoughts on that, and a lot of you wanted us to find the good in this last scene. So I think I've done that as well as I can. There's definitely plenty to be positive about. So, but I think that is it for now. I think we'll see Arya again this season. We'll get a clue of where we're going, then we'll have more to say. Otherwise, we'll be speculating all off season. Yeah. So let that start now, and maybe we'll have an update in a week or two on having a little more information to fit in the picture there. Before we move on, I want to announce the hatching of a dragon in the north. The dragon Mazalacartho has emerged from his egg hatched by Lord Mark Joseph, the Snow in Winterfell. It's a white dragon with green claws, wings, and horns, and figures to be a large beast. It's already unusually sized for a hatchling. Keep you posted on that development. Okay, so I think it went to the Hound next. There was, another one of these somewhat standard, a bunch of dudes behaving badly, behaving obnoxiously right before they get killed. We've seen this a few times in different spots. I'm not complaining. It's just a pattern that they have. Just
to remind us that they deserve it.
Yeah, just to remind us that they deserve it. So the Hound is mad. He is very good at killing, as we are reminded, and he had a lot of practice with that axe. Instead of chopping wood, now he's chopping bodies. And there isn't a lot of takeaway from this moment. Then it fast forwards later in the episode to him re-encountering the Brotherhood, and we get some explanations that we were really curious, like, why did these Brotherhood? So it kind of made sense in the end. It was gone over pretty quickly, but I got to say, I was a little anxious about how this plotline would go. I thought it was a little weak last episode. It wasn't weak overall. It had some weak points. It had some weak explanations. Maybe we'll say it that way. I like the acting was awesome. Ian McShane was fantastic, and it's awesome to have the Hound back. But it made me a little anxious with what they were doing, and it was like, maybe this isn't going to work. Maybe this isn't making sense. Some things don't make. I tried, so we told ourselves, all right, we'll see what they're going to do with it. And I'm pretty happy with the way it went. It was a little rushed, but I'm kind of used to that. They rush some things from time to time. That's pretty normal. They've got a lot to cover, so I give them a pass on rushing things from time to time. But it was really cool to have this dialogue. I thought it was good dialogue, the Hound, and it was cool to see Thoros again. We actually knew that Thoros was coming back. Those of you who listened to our post-credits spoiler discussion, I think I mentioned that. I don't know if I mentioned it in the show-only review. I definitely mentioned it in the book to show. We knew that that Thoros was coming back. We did not know about Beric coming back, though. I
didn't know either, for what it's worth, so it wasn't
cool. Oh, so it must not have been show only review that we talked about it then. Okay, so I didn't mention it on this show, but it was known that that Thoros was coming back. Beric, though, that was a pretty big surprise. No Anguy, though. We didn't see Anguy. That wasn't Anguy pointing the arrow at him. That was definitely couldn't have been him. It was a very different looking person. Not that Anguy isn't necessarily there, but I was kind of hoping to see him since we saw the Brotherhood.
They might have recast him. It's possible.
Yeah, absolutely. That's always possible. There's things that happen outside the scope of what the show can control. Plenty of actors have left the show for bigger roles, and there's just nothing they can do about that. They just have to either recast them or cut them, which is what they did with the Greatjon. It's what they did with Rakaro, which was Dany's blood rider. Both those actors, for example, left the show and they just didn't recast them. Whereas, for example, Dario left and they couldn't just write him out. They kind of had to, find a way to keep him in there. So they recast him. So that just happens sometimes. So there was a lot of parallels to what was discussed in between the Brotherhood and Sandor and what Sandor talked about with Sept and Rey, wasn't there?
Yes.
A lot of the same language used.
Also, again, a lot of references to, the powers that be.
That's one of the main things I was talking about. Yeah, Sandor hears some of the same things coming from worshippers of a different god, which is really cool. I thought that was really neat.
So a few different thoughts I have here. One, something that popped in my head when you're like, we saw him chopping wood, saw him chopping heads. Next, he'll be chopping broccoli.
Surely will.
I don't know how many people out there
he prefers chicken,
but yeah. The one little thing I didn't quite catch the first time, just like a line he said that I didn't quite hear or connect in my mind what he meant. But when the guy draws an arrow on him and he's like, "Put that down, little girl."
Yeah.
What I didn't catch, he said, "I've been beat by tougher girls than you."
He sure has.
In.
The toughest girl there is, perhaps. Yeah.
I'd say it was also, I thought, a telling, funny, morbid moment when guys still just like wrangling. First of all, the way they're hanging people, they're not dying in an instant.
Yeah,
like,
he said it's over in an
yeah,
instant. Like, no, that was not an instant.
Generally, hanging someone, for those that might be interested in this, like the correct quote unquote way to do it is from a great height. The rope should have a lot of slack, and at the moment that you fall far enough that when the moment pulls tight,
your neck breaks.
Your neck just breaks. You're dead instantly.
Yeah.
But I think every single person we've seen hanged, someone correct me. Okay, hanged yes. on Game of Thrones, they've dropped like 4 inches and have been slowly strangled to death, which is terrible and gruesome.
Yeah,
it was not over in an instant. I think they would have preferred to have been hacked down by Sandor.
Maybe not in the crotch, but yes. Yeah. And that whole head chopping thing he did to the first guy, that would have definitely been quicker.
Please take me out like that. Anyway, before this guy's even done suffocating to death, he's like switching out boots with them. Sandor he's just oblivious to the death, just complete no remorse. No,
he's seen so many bad things it doesn't even register.
This is nothing, especially once he's already decided that this guy deserves it. It's
total contempt.
Just nothing. This guy's just a log in the road that he's moving out of the way. There's no concern for this guy's pain or suffering. Whether there should be or not, it might be a debatable point. I don't know, but Sandor did not have it.
No, he did not. He was remorseless.
So maybe the biggest thing that I took from this, Aziz, I think they're going north.
Yeah,
I don't think
absolutely.
they're going to the Riverlands. I don't think they care about Winterfell. I think they
don't care about the Boltons. I mean, they may encounter the Boltons, but I think that's going to be resolved by the time they get there. I think they're going to be there after that battle happens.
I can imagine showing up in the middle of the battle.
Yeah, they can show. Maybe they can help a little. I mean, they're not a big army, but they could help. The Hound by himself is worth like little Lyanna Mormont said. Each Bear Hound was worth 10 mainlanders. Well, not 10 Sandor Cleganes. That's not the mainlander she was thinking of when she said that. Sandor is worth 10. Well, just 10 soldiers or whatever. He's worth a lot.
Yeah. Like, keep in mind something I even pointed out before that we've seen a little bit. We've seen them kind of make note of this, is that this army, this ragtag, last minute thrown together army, they're not necessarily going to have teamwork. They're not necessarily going to follow leadership. They're not necessarily going to be the same 2,000 strong or whatever that a different army 2,000 strong would be. And having this team, the Band of Brothers, they've been working together as a team and a group for years.
Yeah.
You can imagine they really would be worth a lot more. They really could maybe turn a tide in a battle.
Yeah, maybe especially if they're able to do the kind of thing they're good at, which is, ambushing and stuff like that. They wouldn't be in a pitched battle. The things they've been doing probably have prepared them for that. But if they were there sooner, if they were able to get up there in advance of the battle, they could be attacking like skirmishing parties, attacking this and that. But
even in the midst of the battle, we saw how good he was as an archer. From a distance, he could snipe out a couple leaders.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, absolutely.
Charge in from the flank when their focus is elsewhere.
But as we said, it doesn't appear that they're going to get there in time for that. But maybe they will. We'll see.
Yeah.
But that's neat. I mean, it's Sandor and the Brotherhood going north to fight the White Walkers. This is the first group since Stannis outside of the north. Well, Stannis is outside of the north, but so the first group apart from Stannis outside of the north that is taking this threat seriously. And that's really cool. I guess they're aware of it because Thoros can see in the flames, and maybe he's seen some of the same things Melisandre has seen. And other than that, I'm not sure how they would know that this is happening. I'm not sure where they got the information that the north is imperiled. So that's going to be neat to see what happens with them. Sandor going north is exciting. And, I thought there was a nice underlying theme with regards to the title of the episode, which was No One. And Arya, of course, rejects the concept of being no one. And so is Sandor. Sandor is basically nobody. Yeah. He gave up fighting, as Barrack pointed out. How's that working for you? It was a very cutting point to make. He's like, not very well. And he doesn't say that, but that's what his facial expression indicated. And when Thoros asked him, "You have friends, Clegane?" And he's, jokingly, he's like, "Not anymore." And that's kind of like saying, he's nobody. He doesn't have friends. He doesn't really have a purpose. I mean, his purpose, he had a temporary purpose, which was revenge, but then that was done. Like at the moment those guys are hanged, he's out of purpose again. He had a short-term purpose helping build the Sept, but that's gone. So now he has a purpose again. He's somebody. He's part of something. And I think they convinced him to join. I think everybody took it that way.
Yeah, they didn't make it clear, but
the way he kind of looked off in the distance, like, he didn't really have a comeback. He didn't have a retort. And he's always got a retort. He's always got some sort of snide, comeback. He's good at that sort of thing, but he had nothing. He had nothing to say. I think Beric and Thoros convinced him. And that's cool. I'm excited to see all those guys together. That's a good group of characters. I like Thoros a lot. I like the actor playing him, Paul Kaye. We've seen him in some other things. Seen Sandor and other things too. So I think that bodes really well, but I do think it's the last we've seen of them this season. So we'll have to wait a year or so before we see them again. This time he'll be in the preseason trailers probably. They had to keep him out of that for very obvious reasons to hide the surprise. So I don't think we have anything else on there, but I really like the underlying themes. I like the facial acting of the Hound, and I'm looking forward to more of that next season. I do think he will show his purpose. He will be a different man having a real goal. Oh, there's another thing that Beric said, that Sept and Ray said. He said, we have a reason to be here. It's not too late for you to do more good than harm.
Yep.
As much harm as you've done, you can do more good than you've done harm. And that's exactly what Ray's speech was. So Sandor's really hearing these things. And it's so cool. I know I've said this already, but I just think it's so cool, and to reiterate that he's hearing them from two different groups of believers. He's hearing it from R'hllor believers. He's hearing it from worshippers of the Seven. It just seems to be a universal truth. The way it's been presented to him and the way it's presented to the audience, I think that's well done.
Something else, it's a good setup to have characters who are sort of badass fighters.
Yeah.
But it's hard to have them killing people without you feeling bad for the people being killed, right?
Yeah.
Send her north to kill zombies.
Yeah.
We get the action, we get the warrior, but we don't have remorse over,
Yeah, this is
people killed.
It's not gray. I mean, so much of Game of Thrones is gray areas. Like, who's the good guy? Who's like two people who have legitimate grievances are going to war with each other, and it's like it's gray. And that's one of the geniuses of Game of Thrones.
Jon or Ramsay? I don't know.
Sometimes it's clear, but even Ramsay, like it's hard to feel sorry for Ramsay, but you see in some ways why he is the way he is. You get a sense of his father being really a terrible man, and the way he's brought up isn't conducive to making productive, positive human beings in this world, or in that world, in any world. So even Ramsay, you can kind of see, even though you don't feel sorry for him, he still has humanity. He still has likes and anxiety and things that matter to him, and he has real emotions, even though a lot of them are disgusting.
He's got a good sense of humor too.
So it's all very good, and I'm curious where that's going to go as well. But I don't think Ramsay's arc has a lot of exposition left in it. But by the way, that's another thing. A lot of predictions that Sandor would go fight the Mountain. Does not seem like that's even a remote possibility now. If he's going north, which seems like he definitely is, he's heading the opposite direction. And so maybe much later they could meet up again and fight. But it really seems like that possibility has shrunk to a very tiny one.
It seemed unlikely in the first place just because of the timing, but now even the potential of a trial by combat showdown between them,
right?
That's out of the.
It's not even. Yeah, it wouldn't even be a trial by combat. It would have to be some other circumstance where they fight. So, yeah. So sorry, folks, if you were really hoping for Clegane Bowl, that's what it was called in the fandom ahead of time. It doesn't look good for Clegane Bowl. I guess we can't 100% say it's done, but it ain't going to be a trial by combat, I don't think.
Again, this is kind of a wild thought, but you could get people at odds with each other fighting side by side into the north against zombies. What if Cersei has to flee King's Landing rather than face trial, and the Mountain goes with her, and they head north to take part in the real cause?
That's where things are safe.
And you have Sandor and the the Hound of the Mountain fighting side by side against the Night's King.
That would be weird. Okay, so let's take our first short ad break, and we'll come right back to move on to the next plot line. I think we'll go to River Run next, talk about other characters heading north and other characters heading to King's Landing. Right on. Okay. River Run. This is another example of maybe a few things that didn't sit quite right with expectations and some of the perhaps logic of the situation, balanced out by some really great acting. Brienne and Jaime was very meaningful and well acted, and it hit kind of hard, but I think that took second fiddle to Jaime's scene with Edmure, which is really neat because Edmure is hasn't been a character on the show of importance, except as, he's out there, he's in prison for so long. All of a sudden, this great character, played by a great actor, Tobias Menzies, who a lot of people know from Outlander, which I haven't checked out yet. I probably will someday. It's got good reviews. And I remember him from Rome. So he's been known that he's a great actor for quite a while. And he kind of comes out of nowhere to deliver this great scene, even though he's been a character on the show for a while. So I really like that. And I know you like that scene too? Yeah,
it's one of my favorites of the season. I really like that scene between him and Jaime.
How do you live with yourself?
Yeah. It reminds me, a couple things. One thing, remember last week I expressed a little frustration with how Jaime was being treated as an oath breaker by people who I felt like themselves were breaking oaths on some level. And maybe it's a little worse for Jaime because his particular specificness of his oath to the king, and
it was the timing of it too,
right? Exactly, and a perception of the world around, because we kind of know where Jaime's coming from and why he did it, but the rest of the world doesn't. And Jaime is too arrogant to explain himself to anyone, and it happens again here. Yeah. As soon as Edmure goes there, Jaime's like, "Look, this is a negotiation. He's not going to defend. He refuses to defend it. He
knows no one's going to even believe him. He's probably tried it, and people just." Yeah.
I was reminded that there was another oath that would be perceived as him having broken by the Blackfish, especially, right? Of returning Sansa and Arya in exchange for Catelyn.
Which Brienne does confront Blackfish about that.
Right, and that which was...
But that was after.
But it did affect Blackfish. He was like, all right, let me read this letter.
He at least at least got her to read the letter. Got him to read the letter, yeah.
She seemed to be proving her value to him, as having integrity, if you will, right?
Yes.
He seemed to be accepting her as a knight, and she was telling him that she trusted Jaime. And at first he wanted to blow her off, but when she kind of pointed the truth out to him, he gave it some credence. He's like, all right, I'll at least read the letter. And I also wanted to point out, I felt in this scene, in that moment, very quick and very subtle, even though he's trying to put on this front for
Brienne, he finally broke his. Yeah,
you see this moment of emotion. It's like she's just like her mother. You know what I mean? And that's the kind of thing that I wanted last episode for some show of emotion toward the dilemma that Edmure is in. But you still, in the end, he's still just this stubborn old man. It still seems like he should just go with Brienne.
I know. We all wanted that. I think that was disappointing, not in a way like, damn it, why did they write it that way? But in a damn it, Blackfish, go with them. It's like
be that way.
An in-world frustration, not I wish they had written it differently. Because I understand it completely. Like, it's the same. It's kind of the same thing with Barristan. This guy is a legendary fighter. One of the most famous men in the Seven Kingdoms because of his reputation and what he did as a young man. But how are they going to show that on TV? It's not like this actor who's legitimately the age he looks. I mean, he's probably a little younger than he looks. That tends to be Hollywood actors look younger than they actually are. That's really common. So how are they going to make it believable that he's a badass warrior? They're going to show scenes of him fighting. Is he going to fight White Walkers? Is he going to fight? I mean, he could just be a commander. Sure, that would work. That'd be fine. But again, screen time wise, contract wise, it's all this other stuff. It makes sense. It's the pattern we've seen for all 6 seasons. They just can't fit everyone in. So they got to find ways to have people exit stage left. And this fits as well as other things does. He's reached the end of his life. And besides, to me, it's fairly convincing that he's given up, because he's so stubbornly held out for so long. He took the castle back, and then he's just ordered to give it up.
Relinquished. Like I thought about that too. That think of the men that died trying to take that castle back.
Yeah, it was just a way. It was just totally for nothing. And now that's got to be depressing. And so he still has the inner fortitude to go out fighting and to kind of have go out on his own terms. You know, it wasn't at all what he wanted, but he's still, you know, he's not going to linger. He's going to be remembered for this. And, you know, it's not necessarily satisfying, but it makes sense. And, you know, if you kind of put yourself in his shoes, yeah, that's just deflating, like massively deflating to go through all that effort, to have his family slaughtered, like he said, and then to have one of his, you know, the one family member that's like his closest relation who's still alive, just be like, surrender, give it all up, you know. And it's just like, oh,
by the way, that was another really subtle moment that I appreciated was when Edmure first walks in,
yeah,
and he spots the Blackfish across the room, and they look at each other for a moment. Edmure turns the corner and goes up the stairs. I think that was sort of like I don't want to say warning, because I don't feel like Edmure was warning Blackfish, I'm going to get you. But it was like, hey, you're in trouble. You need to get out of here. Like,
yeah.
You're right. I am under the knife. They're going to kill my son or whatever. But you quit. Go while you can. They're still after you, you know.
Yeah, and I think that's I think that might have been a part of what Jaime was thinking there as well with Brienne. He didn't care about Blackfish getting away. I mean, he cares. He didn't want to encourage that, but he obviously didn't want to have to lock up Brienne.
Yeah, he doesn't need to get Blackfish to go back to King's Landing.
Yeah,
he needs to get Riverrun to go back to King's Landing.
Exactly. And it's back to where they were before. You know, if he gets away, well, it's Walder Frey. It's kind of the Walder Frey line. Well, what does he have? I have Tywin Lannister backing me. Who does he have? Well, he doesn't have Tywin Lannister backing him anymore. But now the Blackfish is back to, well, he would have been no one. And so he decided to die rather than go be no one. There was no men for him to recruit anymore. Those were the men he had to recruit. And it's kind of unclear what happened to those men. I guess they were just sent to their farms and sent home. Jaime, I assume Jaime didn't slaughter them because that would be a bit much. But it's interesting too that sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I think it's outside of Jaime's character. He's not cruel.
He's not like that. He's channeling Tywin in a lot of ways, but he's not Tywin. Yeah. He's not.
And it would not necessarily have been productive. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think Tywin would have either. Those men are potential recruits for a new army. You need them to farm the land.
Yeah.
They have value as human beings. You know, if you just slaughtered them all,
it's also
not only
practice.
Might you turn other lords against you, but you lose the resources of these people.
Because they were following orders, and if they follow the orders of their new lord, then it's fine for them to be who they are. Like if they follow the orders of the Freys, now that the Freys are back in charge of Riverrun, then they should. There's no reason not to pardon them. They did what they're supposed to do.
They're clearly loyal.
Yeah, that one guy just.
I'm sure he had friends and soldiers under him die, taking that castle back. And the Lord said, "Open the gate, open the gate."
Mm-hmm.
Look, I'm following my Lord said, but he's doing it anyway. You know, like they were loyal. So
there's a lot of other interesting things going on. I think that, for example, the Brienne and Jaime was really interesting to me for one reason, and it's Jaime's sadness over having to deal with Brienne. He's a totally different person in the way he deals with Brienne than when he is with anybody else. And partly that's because she's the only person in the world, even including Cersei perhaps, that truly believes in him as an honorable guy. And that means something to him because he wants that. He knows part of him kind of thinks that it's impossible that he'll ever be seen as a man who's an honorable man, a just man, because of his reputation and how hard it is to undo a reputation you've had for that long. I mean, it's built into his nickname, even his reputation. But Brienne's the one person that was willing to take him at his word. She's the one person that's like, Jaime's word is good enough for me. Blackfish was like, your word is meaningless. Other people, his word is meaningless. Brienne was like, he says, I'll give my word that I won't attack those men. And Brienne believed it. Nobody else, pretty much no one else would have believed it that wasn't, like a subordinate of his.
Additionally, I think Jaime respects her. her believing him is more meaningful than a lot of other people would be, right?
Mhm.
It might be meaningful for the Blackfish because he has his own reputation and character, but Jaime knows that Brienne really is honorable. Does that make sense?
That's true.
He kind of like Sandor. Jaime knows that the Mountain is not an honorable man. He's not a knight. You know, like Jaime, I'm sure, has some ideals in his mind about what a knight should be. He joined Kingsguard as a young man with other heroes, right? Legends like Barristan Selmy and we saw him in the flashback at the Tower of Joy. I can't think of his name. Arthur Dayne, right? These are men that Jaime fought and served with, right?
They idolized,
He has a concept of what honor is and what a great knight is, and he also sees it. These Lancel got knighted. Come on, you know, he's I imagine has a certain distaste for it as well. But then he sees Brienne. He's like, she's a real knight. She's really honorable. He recognized that, even if he didn't have the honor that people don't think he does, which we kind of he does. It's just it's weird or hard to explain or whatever. But he still appreciates it, admires it, and recognizes it in Brienne. So
right on.
I think he has a appreciation for her as a person and a knight, but also, like you said, that her belief in him is more meaningful coming from her. He knows it's not because he has money or because there's someone just doing what they're told. She legit respects him, and her respect is valuable. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, I agree with that. And that's something that he really, that's partly why he's such a different person around her, is because he gets something from her that he doesn't get from anyone else. And it's really meaningful. It shows him how important that is. It's like something he's been missing all his life. And it's like a lot of people were hoping that this reuniting of Jaime and Brienne would kickstart some feelings that had been dormant, that Jaime started to be, you know, he's on this redemptive arc, sort of. And it's kind of back and forth on that. The more he interacts with his sister, the less the backward. It's like a backwards path. Like the more he like buys into Cersei's ideals, and I mean, it's not entirely her, but on his own, I'm not quite sure he would be as, you know, she's the more vicious of the two of them for sure, the more vindictive and the more paranoid as well. Of course, she has good reason to be paranoid because of the prophecy and all that. But so I'm not trying to say it's all Cersei's fault. Certainly, Jaime is culpable, but at the same time, we haven't seen Cersei's redemption much. She, if it's ever going to happen, it isn't happening now. She's just things are getting worse for her. Whereas Jaime, it's like back and forth. Sometimes he seems to be going towards the path of honor, and then his family pulls him the wrong way. And he was confronted with that. You know, Brienne's like, you know, you wouldn't, you know, blah, 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 honor. And he's like, I'm a Lannister. You know, he's like, it's duty, honor. Dude, it's like the Tully words are being put in play there. It's like, family is still first, duty honor, last, and same as Edmure himself did. He had to give up everything. His duty was to hold the castle. His honor, hold the castle. But his baby, his firstborn son's life is threatened. So family first. So that's actually kind of interesting there that Edmure put his family first. He upheld the Tully words, perhaps more than the Blackfish did. You know, Blackfish was about duty first.
Yeah.
And maybe a little bit about honor. Maybe, it's arguable which was more in play there, duty or honor, but they both were. And not as much about family. So I just want to, I'm still kind of thinking about Jaime and Brienne and their relationship and the nature of their characters. Especially when you go back to the scene with Edmure too, because it's kind of revealing. Definitely. I think that Jaime is kind of like surprised and impressed with Brienne for all her like honor, still able to get her mission done. Because Jaime, in the end, he's like, look, Edmure, I'll fucking kill your baby, man. I don't care. You know what I mean? Like, we're knights and honor and all this tradition and shit, but look, I'm going to just kill your baby, dude. And a catapult against the stone wall, I'm going to get what I want. Rand wouldn't go there. You know, Jaime is willing and able to go to a certain level to get things done. That threat's believable because it's his bad reputation working for him there. Like if he was Barristan Selmy, he couldn't make that threat. Right. It was like, Selmy, you're not going to do that. You're not going to catapult the baby. Get out of here. But Jaime says that. Tully's like, he crumbled. Like he visibly crumbled. He even whimpered a little. It was really good acting. He's like, this is the one thing he cannot deal with. He has no comeback for that. All his defiance is just gone. It's like, you're threatening my infant son. Like, I mean, I really like that scene. I think we've seen several scenes along that line
where two characters are trying to connect or level with each other, and often even characters at odds. They're trying to explain their position.
Yeah.
And through it, Edmure's like, I don't have to listen to this shit. You know what I mean? And Jake's like, yes, you do, man. Like, hey, you're tied up.
This is not a negotiation.
Prisoner. I'm going to tell you how it is. And he's trying to like lead into it with his story. He's trying to make an example. And what he's building up to is, look, I'm going to just kill your kid. I'm going to do what I have to. I'm trying to connect with you as a brother. I'm trying to connect with you as a father. I'm trying to connect with you. Okay, look, I'm just going to kill your kid, man. Just do it. You don't have a choice here, right? He
made it really clear. He's like, look, he made it so believable. He's like, the only thing that matters to me is Cersei. And that's believable from Edmure's point of view. And he's like, look, I'm the guy who stabbed his own king in the back. You think I won't do this? Edmure has if Edmure had any doubts, they're too small to get past the pure terror that inspires.
So Jaime understands and respects, maybe even wants to be honorable, but he also has and is able and is willing to just do whatever. You know?
Yes.
In fact, I remember at one point a long time ago, I didn't even remember if it was on the show, but just like talking about who the best warrior in the land was or might be, you know, the Mountain, Jaime, Barristan, and I would even want, what about Bronn? We saw him kicking Knight's ass, and like, there's this difference between two knights fighting with honor and, fighting with swords on the street versus jousting on a horse in a tournament, and I thought that, and we even in this episode, it was referenced again when Bronn's like, look, man, you just need to win. Don't worry about fighting in a tournament or whatever. And he just kind of tricks him and takes him off guard. We saw when he kicked the knight out of the moon door, he fought with honor. How'd that work out?
Yeah.
And I think that one reason I think Jaime might be the best or would have been or could at one point was maybe not now, but it's because I think he is able to fight as well as anyone with honor in a tournament, jousting on a horse, but also he'll kick in the nuts. He's like, he understands Bronn. He understands where Bronn is coming from too. Yeah. I think he will just do something dishonorable or whatever.
He's been in war. Sure he knows that you can't always.
He's a little more jaded and cynical and practical or whatever.
Probably more than most, as far as being jaded because of how, from his point of view, how backwards people's views on each other are. He's like, I did this great thing and everybody hates me and all these other people are not behaving like knights and they get rewarded, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, to him, the world is just screwy.
Yeah. I really love that moment when I thought it was a really good telling moment. There's a lot in a really quick, subtle moment between him and Brienne. They've had their conversation and they're about to leave. And she stops him. She's like, it's the moment when she says, honor will compel me to fight you. And he's like, well, let's hope it doesn't come to that. He understood what she was saying and he didn't want that to happen either. But he also was like, I'll kill you.
He did not want to dwell on it either.
No,
he was like, he kind of like, let's hope it doesn't go to. He's smiley. And she's like, no, dude, take this seriously. He's like, yeah, okay.
but right before that, as they were leaving, what stopped to have that secondary little conversation is she says, one more thing, Sir Jaime. He's like, what is it, Lady Brienne? He just found a little humor, and he feel like, at what point can we just be two people and drop these? Where we're like in a tent in private. We've kind of like been through a lot together. You don't have to call me Sir Jaime, Yeah. And again, it just kind of reminded me of how much she's just truly the life of a knight all the time. It's not a show she's putting on.
Yeah.
And he finds humor in it. He respects it and he appreciates it. Partly because he feels like it's his handicap. She's got one arm tied behind her back when she's trying to save Sansa or whatever it is. He's like, man, I'll use this chopped off arm to kill your baby. I'm not holding anything behind my back. But good job to you, Brienne, for doing it even with one hand behind your back. So.
Yeah, so I guess we'll just see where that goes. It's interesting. They did all of this pretty quickly. This whole River Run plot was resolved fairly quickly. Jaime's in fact, we thought the trailer scene of him going into River, that scene of them marching in, we saw that in the trailers. I thought it was them marching away from River Run. Similar enough difference because it's the victory march, basically. And that means Jaime would be back at King's Landing fairly soon. And that's interesting because obviously he's talked about how Cersei needs him. And she does, in fact, because this whole trial by combat plan has gone in the toilet. So Cersei's really running out of options, and Jaime is certainly capable of helping.
So hopefully the show isn't setting themselves up for everyone to be like, oh, look, you guys did it wrong by giving a date they set the trial for the first of the Mother's season, or I can't remember how they phrased it.
Basically, Mother's Day.
Yeah. So I wonder what other indicators we've gotten time to let us know. Does Jaime have time to get back?
I have no idea
to King's Landing before that happens.
We don't even know how long it took him to get there. I mean, we have an idea how long it should take based on book stuff, but that just doesn't play here. They do their own thing with time.
Because I remember wondering, why is this all happening at night? You know, watching a trailer, thinking ahead, why are they moving around at night? Aren't they 2 weeks away from King's Landing? Does it matter if they get back in 2 weeks and 4 hours? You know, like so. But again, maybe maybe it will matter that it's 2 weeks and 4 hours. Maybe it'll be that close. Maybe Jaime will just ride off on his own with a small group rather than trooping thousands of guys all the way back immediately. He can just rush himself back and leave Bronn in charge or whatever, you know.
Yeah, I agree. And it's so we don't really know how that's going to be left, and it's definitely still up in the air. Maybe we should. Why don't we actually talk about King's Landing next, since these kind of connect to each other in a bit? I definitely wonder. I'm very curious what Jaime's reaction will be when he gets back and finds out what's happened. Of course, more things will probably happen by the time he gets back, I would think. Maybe not. Maybe he gets back right as things are right when her trial's getting ready to start. I'm not sure. He's expecting to have missed her trial, but they apparently has been moved, because it was said to be happening within a few days back when Marjorie's trial was going to happen, and now they've announced what day it's on, which sounds like it was changed potentially. Whether it is or not, it's not really clear. But the fact is, Jaime seems to have more time than we thought. But I still don't think he'll get back in time. But that's just a pure guess. So, but let's dial that back a little bit. Actually, there's one thing we forgot to talk about real briefly: Bronn and Podrick reuniting. Yeah. There wasn't maybe a lot to take away from that scene. It was fun, and it's like you said, there was some kind of an undertone of the type of fighting that matters. Bronn is perhaps the epitome of doing anything it takes to win rather than fighting honorably. And if Brienne has been teaching Podrick, she probably hasn't been teaching him a lot of dirty tricks. Brienne's not the dirty trick type. She's super skilled, of course, but she's probably not big on the throwing dirt in the face and the kneeing in the groin. Maybe she can do that. That's all part of well and good of fighting. But I'm guessing she's not on Bronn's level in terms of, other ways to street fighting and things like that. That's his specialty. And of course, he's also good at the straight up military. So that's going to be, that maybe is something interesting. Podrick says, when he says, you're still alive. And he's like, I'm not dead yet, or whatever, something like that. It's like, no, don't say that. Don't say I'm not dead yet. Don't say that. Yeah. Don't jinx yourself, Pod. You're already not a central character. That's never bodes well. Well, the central characters die all the time too. Anyway. All right. So let's go to King's Landing. Another scene with a lot of really good acting in a couple of different spots. Tommen's uncomfortable posture on the throne was very visible. He knew he was kind of betraying his mother and selling her out a bit, and wouldn't look at her. And that just had to hurt more for Cersei's point of view. She was really hurt by all this. And you can see that she's got, in both the scenes, you can see that she's a combination of, she's trying to keep it all together. She's trying to keep it in control, but she loses her composure a few times. She's just like, when Lancel comes to threaten her and to demand her presence at this High Sparrow is commanding her, she's listening, and she's kind of like, no, it was a request and I'm denying it. And then as he's just explaining, he's like, no, get out of here. Then she just kind of breaks a little. It's like, leave. She's just kind of loses her cool. Yeah. And it's because she's not powerful anymore. She's still powerful. She's just a lot less powerful than she was. We see how Kevin just embarrasses her in front of the court, and that had to really hurt because of how, compared to being walked naked through the streets, probably didn't hurt all that much, but it still hurt, I'm sure. And she's not going to forget that, I don't think. She also, I will say, is handling it well, as tough as this is. Yeah. Like, she could have made more of a scene there, but it probably just makes things worse. She knows, she's like, all right, I'll play by your rules. I'll go with the other. Conserve what little dignity she can. Yeah. Yeah. She doesn't push it. She starts off with this sort of an arrogance, but when someone like draws a line, she stays on her side of it. Yeah. And I think at least partly because she's patient. She's like waiting for the right moment. It's so partly like she knows she needs to be patient, but inside she's really anxious, and paranoid. She's boiling.
I was going to say a minute ago, I thought that in the beginning of the season, I was trying to defend her, or like maybe look for a leaf having been turned over, that maybe what she's gone through, and the realization that this prophecy is coming through true, that maybe she would be less vindictive and violent and hasty. I want to say emotionally reactive, vindictive or whatever. And I think that she maybe is still all those things, but more patient. She's, I think she's internalized what before would have come out more quickly.
Yeah.
Because she's lost her ability to act on it. But it does seem like she looked pretty happy to see blood spill when the mountain ripped that guy's head off,
Yes.
Little grin there.
It was satisfying, and it was like, it's what she's been lacking, which is she's been losing power. She's been gradually losing her power and her ability her influence. And that was a moment of, well, I can still do that. It's not all, she's not beaten yet, that kind of thing. Yeah. It was a similar expression that Qyburn had, because Qyburn hadn't gotten to see him in action much either, or at all. And there was a bit of kind of like odd satisfaction for him. It was a little different. Their reactions were, but similar, similar but different. They're different things they were looking for there. But they both were very pleased with the result. I personally was really looking forward to that scene because I've been really wanting to see the mountain in action. And it's kind of a funny thing to be looking forward to, seeing someone literally get their head ripped off. But I was really expecting more, to be honest. I thought maybe that the other Faith Militant would rush into action as well, and he would just slaughter them all. I thought Lancel was doomed. Guess I was wrong. I still think he's doomed. He just, it's delayed a bit longer. Maybe not this season. We'll see. But that brings us to...
I wanted to say I did appreciate, because I think this is often something I struggle with swallowing sometimes when action scenes happen, is you have the badass, or maybe a couple badasses, whatever, and they're going up against the rando thugs, right? And the badass just like easily slaughters the first 2 or 3 guys. And the next 2 or 3 guys are just like, oh, I'll just run on in. And like, at what point you're like, I'm not a hero. I'm a red shirt. Like, I'm just going to stand back and run away. I'm not going to, the guy that's going to beat this guy,
and these are zealots. They're supposed to like be filled with faith, like God will protect us, the Seven will protect us, but their real world visceral reaction is too overpowering. They're like, holy crap.
All right, we'll just go now.
That was intimidating as hell.
Yeah.
And they, and that was just otherworldly. What happened? Like, a person ripping another person's head off is just beyond
Just trying to think like a turkey. Just trying to grab the leg and try to pull it off.
No, I mean, pulling the spine apart like that.
No, that's what I'm saying.
I know, that's what I'm saying. It's like ridiculous. He's insanely strong.
It's like,
wow.
Remember with Theon trying to like hack through, like this with the sword and leverage and swinging down. And he, with his bare hands, ripped it apart.
This is an incredibly strong creature.
Yeah.
He is
also just took the mace right to the chest.
He didn't
even flinch.
Yeah. Well, I don't even know what that weapon was called.
I think how strong it had to be to lift someone up off the guy. That guy's got to be 140 or 60 pounds. Can you imagine, like, just pay a barbell with 140 pounds, just picking it up?
Just one-handed. Yeah, and that is the
throwing it.
That actor's name is Hafthor, after all. He is one of the world's strongest men. So you wonder, was that even a stunt? Could he really do that in real life?
He really ripped that guy's head off. Had to that scene 3 or 4 times.
It's like, oh, we gotta have another. Sorry, we need you to have your head ripped off. It's like, dang, we lost a lot of extras in that scene. So what I was gonna say is, it sets up what the possibilities for the mountain's exit eventually, or Lancel's exit, really is what I think is more imminent. I think the mountain will be around a bit longer, maybe a lot longer. Hard to say. He is going to be awfully hard to kill. It's particularly hard to kill the undead, as we've seen. The old rumor. This is very juicy. The old rumor that Qyburn is supposed to be looking into. If he just said the rumor, that would open up so many possibilities. It would be really hard to even nail them, to even mention them all, let alone discuss them. Possibilities like, well, Cersei wanted him to find out about the rumors of who killed Joffrey, or the rumors of, something else going on with the Tyrells. The rumors
of
an affair
the Sparrow had.
Sure, something. There's a million possibilities.
Where Olenn is going.
Yeah, there's so many options, but old rumor narrows it down. And when we come back after our mid-episode ad break, I'll tell you what I think is by far the most likely thing that's going on here.
I'll say I have another big thought about this whole scene.
Cool.
Too,
All right. Excellent. So multiple ideas in just a moment. Okay, so I'll give my idea first. You give yours. We'll let everyone marinate on those ideas, and then we'll discuss the merits of both ideas. My thought is that, remember what we talked about with regards to the visions and Bran seeing the Mad King and the pyromancers and wildfire. Well, this is where I think this is going. The old rumor would have something to do with the wildfire that was never set off. The Jaime stopped them from setting off, but the wildfire was still there to be set off, and it wasn't necessarily dismantled. And so that could be the ace in the hole here for Cersei/Qyburn, something to do with setting off wildfire, which has all kind. And of course, as we talked about, that would explain the hole in the roof from Dany's vision, why King's Landing would be gutted. In other words, this could get really out of control. If she tries to do something with wildfire, gets out of hand. King's Landing itself. We could be talking about King's Landing being completely destroyed by wildfire. Oh my God, that would be huge. Especially if she kills her own son with it somehow, especially if Tommen is killed by it. She might be aiming for the High Sparrow. Obviously, she'd be aiming for the High Sparrow and some of the other faith, but maybe she gets Marjorie. Maybe she gets Loras. Maybe she gets Tommen.
First of all, I want to say I'm with you on this. That's exactly what I took that to be. I have a thought about a different thing.
Cool.
We'll get to that in a second. But on this, I thought that I also just assumed as soon as she said it that they were talking about the wildfire that left over from the areas they'd set. And it's also possible that some of it was found or dismantled or no. Like you can imagine, Jaime probably gave some kind of warning.
Yeah.
But they might not have got all of it, or might have purposefully not got all of it.
Yes.
And I was starting to form in my head this thought that King's Landing was going to be burned to the ground after those visions, and think about how things were going, especially because I keep thinking that Cersei's going to have to flee, that everyone else is leaving King's Landing. But I started to reconsider that maybe not the whole city gets burned to the ground, that maybe just the throne room gets
just a lot of it.
A lot of it, or maybe just the throne room.
Yeah, but the important part, the throne room, right. Red Keep, maybe.
And, excuse me, the throne room, though, doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense if she's trying to target the Sparrow or disrupt the trial.
Yeah, it would have to get out of control and spread.
Right.
Yeah.
I think Shay and I went back and found a reference where Jaime did say, and I'm not going to quote exactly, but I think he said the Sept, the Red Keep, and all over the city, or something to that effect, is where he said that it was.
In reference to where the
wildfire had been set. Yeah.
Okay.
I think when he was talking to Brienne.
If he specifically named the Sept, that is very telling.
Right. But that still doesn't and so in my mind, maybe just a Sept will be burned down. Like, no, wait, we saw the throne room and this vision, at least, with snow coming through a missing ceiling.
Yeah.
So one thought I have is maybe at first I started to think that maybe the throne room, they'll set the throne room on fire as a distraction. If they set the throne room on fire in the middle of the trial, all of a sudden be panic in the city and the trial be disrupted. And a minimum would be delayed, or maybe set up Cersei's escape or something. But then we did hear Jaime specifically say that it was in the Sept also. So maybe a little more worried about maybe I was thinking that it might be more contained rather than destroying the whole city. But reevaluating based on the fact that it was pointed out to us in the past that the Sept and the throne room and all over the city, we saw the throne room burned. It's hard to say for sure, but those are the ideas swirling around in my head from the bits of clues that have been given us. So.
Burn them all.
Yeah. Which also, right, we did see that's the line we got from Ares.
Yep.
So
yep, if it's kind of a oblique view of the future by looking at the past. But remember, when we analyzed that scene, the scene of the wildfire erupting and flowing into the chamber where the other wildfire was stored, no evidence that ever happened. So that could be a vision of what's coming.
Right.
And we talked about that at the time, and now we have this very straightforward vehicle for how that might happen. And of course, Qyburn brings that up only after their other option is exhausted. It's like, well, because the mention that trial-like combat would be banned throughout the Seven Kingdoms was something that we sort of predicted. We guessed that was a strong possibility. Whether or not it would be that specific, we did name that as a possibility. But in general, our prediction was, come on, High Sparrow knows that Cersei has the mountain, and he's checked her every move. And this is way too obvious. Like, he knows she has the mountain. He knows that no one can beat the mountain. and one-on-one. So, you know, as zealous as he is, as faithful as he is, he's not stupid. He knows all these things that we just said. So this is how he gets around it. We knew he'd get around it some way. We didn't know what it was specifically, but we knew he was aware of this. We knew he would check this move. Sure enough, he checked it thoroughly. But you know what's funny is I kind of agree with him. The trial by combat's kind of bullshit.
On one hand, I kind of think that it is.
The timing of it is obviously very
bullshit itself
as well.
Right?
Yeah.
But it's worth noting in real world history, that was the thing. People genuinely believe in God.
Oh, I agree.
And that he would act through men. That's how the king is chosen. He's divinely chosen by God. This guy is the king because God said so. And the idea of having a trial by combat is, you know, Tommen said in his little speech that it's a excuse to get out of true combat. But that, to me, that's almost like saying you don't believe in your own God. You don't think your God has enough power to make this trial work out the way it should. You don't have faith in your. I feel like it's hypocritical on multiple levels. But it is a reality check that even someone who's a fanatic, you know, the Sparrow, well, man, if I want to win his trial, I can't rely on the gods. So you're right. She's got the mountain. Those faith militant coming to get Cersei, they weren't relying on the God. They weren't fighting the mountain, you know, on a certain level, however fanatical you are, when reality is in your face. So here's the thing that I was wondering about that may just be completely curtailed if the whole city gets burned down. But what if the Sparrow gets his way? What if Cersei goes on trial, no combat, witnesses come forth, and she's found guilty of adultery and incest, and Tommen is not the legitimate king? What does the Sparrow, what's the next thing? Does the Sparrow not foresee that as a way that it could go? Is that part of his plan?
I don't think it is. He's too smart for that. We haven't seen him make any blatantly obvious mistakes, at least not yet. And he does seem to be aware of the politics around the situation. So I think that's a really good point that you raise. But I'm not sure they're going to bring up incest in the trial because of that very reason. That, you know, same reason he doesn't bother to go after Jaime despite all Jaime's crimes. So he doesn't have a reason to. There's no political gain for it. So it's the same thing here. Why would he go after something that has negative political gain for him?
But even if he doesn't go after it, it still might come out.
But who is going to bring it up? Okay, consider this. It's a trial in front of septons at the sept. Every single one of these judges, whoever they are, the High Sparrow is going to have spoken with ahead of time. There's no random person that's going to bring that up. This is all engineered. You know what I'm saying? It could be brought up. I'm not saying it's impossible. Yeah. But I just really, really doubt it'll happen because everything we've seen the High Sparrow do is building his own power. And this would be really, really against making him, you know, this would be a huge step back for him. So it just seems like he's not going to make such a horrible mistake.
I want to agree with you. I tend to agree with you. And I don't know the nature of the trial. I don't know if it will be public. Will anyone else be present? Will Kevin be there?
If it's being held in the Great Sept, it will be public.
Right. So are there going to be witnesses called?
But again, witnesses can't just bring up new topics. That's not how it works. I mean, someone could just blurt it out, the incest, blah, blah, blah. But if no one pursues that line of questioning, it's not going to matter.
Maybe no one will. But again, what is she on trial for?
For murdering the king. That's what Lancel knows. That's what Lancel's aware of. I mean, he's aware of the incest as well. But that doesn't mean he talked about it. And even if he did, it doesn't mean they'll bring it up at trial. The thing she's on trial for is murdering the king. For murdering Robert. I do remember there was a scene when he was letting her go last season. Yeah. And I'm going to let you go see your son. You're going to have to make this walk of atonement. Yes. And then they talked for a minute, and then he said something about, but then when your trial comes, she's like, wait, my trial? And he's like, well, there's still other crimes you're accused of. Yeah. And I thought he named incest as one of them. I thought he said if incest. He did, then that's very interesting, but I really don't think he did. So we'll just have to, since we don't know, we'll just have to leave that.
I partly wonder if it is part of his plan. I can't think of how it would go, but maybe he does expect it to come out and has a plan for it.
Yeah, that's possible too. That's very possible.
And I also wonder at what point Cersei might just admit to it. Like if she's feel like she's going down anyway. If she's found guilty of killing a king, she's just going to be killed anyway, right? What else could this?
Well, then that means she's putting her son in danger, which is the absolute last thing she would do.
I assume that you're right, but even if it's the absolute last thing that she would do, she may have to do the absolute last thing. If her
For
son,
what purpose though? Why would she do it?
She's going to be her son is having a trial where she's going to be put to death at the end.
Yeah, but why would she spill that over onto him? Why would she say, well, if I'm going to die, my son's going to coming with me? Where does that like that doesn't fit? If she loves her son, she wants him to live. Why would she do something so blatantly likely to be dangerous and deadly to him?
Do you think you think she's willing to die? I think she's just going to be killed by her son without admitting that her son isn't legitimate? Absolutely.
What would it gain her? If it would save her own life, then maybe you have a point. But if it's just going to make Tommen die also, there's no why. That doesn't make any sense. That's borderline silly. Like, why would she? Unless it's going to save her. Like, if she's going to die anyway, there's no reason for her to drag Tommen into it with her. Right?
What if she can do it in a less public way? What if she can hint at it?
In a trial? I mean, what good is that going to do? I don't know. I don't think this is worth pursuing. We just don't have all the details, and we'll just have to wait and see. So what else is there for King's Landing? I think another interesting thing to think about is the way things have shifted at King's Landing. Everything is really before in the past. King's Landing has been about a lot of different things happening, and we see a lot of points of view. It's really Cersei's point of view now. In a lot of ways, it's really everything is from her perspective in a sense. You know, not 100%. We obviously still have the occasional scene with something that doesn't involve her, but those things are mostly exposition. We see Cersei planning. We see her secrets. The other things we find, she is confronted with them as they come out. Like, oh, no trial by combat. We talked about that behind the scenes, and you're being confronted with that. Cersei's plans and schemes we are at least somewhat well aware of. These other things are being done off screen and presented to us. So yeah, we're kind of the viewer's point of view is very similar to Cersei's point of view. And again, this is another spot where there's really great facial acting as she's watching Tommen, and as these things are coming out, she kind of, and when to make this announcement, and you can see her kind of like her anxiety, like, uh-oh, what's coming? What's coming next? Yeah, I thought it was really, really well done. Lena Headey's really just awesome as Cersei. I wasn't even a huge fan of her in season 1, but I think she totally won me over. She's just
yeah. Also, Tommen as a character, I feel like I have a hard time liking him, especially at this point. I'm guessing most viewers do, but I think as an actor, he's also doing
job. This may be one of the best scenes he's had. Like, it's really hard for all that guilt.
Yeah,
you know, he couldn't look at her, and he just like the way he's kind of like shifting in his seat. He was uncomfortable. Yeah, that was really good.
Uneven.
Yeah, he wasn't exactly. I decree. He was like, I decree. After
much thought and prayer. I think we've decided that.
You see the tone of the court has really changed too. When he finishes, it's like 7 blessings, and everyone just 7 blessings, or they all repeat it. It was like, ooh, this is really like everyone's getting really religious here.
I will say a thought that I had at one point was, I wonder what kind of conversation Olenna and Kevin had when she left. Is he aware she left? And you're talking about how it seems to be mostly from Cersei's perspective. I think there is one other perspective that we're getting. Marjorie's. I think we get Marjorie's.
Yeah, we have been. We just it seems to have, since she's been. Yeah, it's true. We kind of argue. You're right. We've been getting a lot of her point of view, and it's just that her point of view is so narrow because she's been in prison. She hasn't had room to maneuver.
In the past, we were getting many different people's perspectives.
Yeah,
and it has narrowed down a lot. And excuse me, I think it's primarily Cersei.
Tommen's point of view before. Now
at first I was thinking, no, we see a lot of the Sparrow's we just see him interacting with Cersei or with Jaime, who's gone now, or with Marjorie.
We never see him like behind closed doors planning. We just see like, what is he up to here? What is this dialogue telling us? What is he after? We
didn't see him with Loras. We don't see him with it. We saw him with Marjorie.
Yeah.
We see him with Cersei.
And we saw him with Tom the one time, but it's really, that's the whole like, winning him over, like sinking his little.
There are a couple exceptions, but as a whole, I agree with what you're saying. As a whole, King's Landing has been narrowed down to Cersei's perspective, and I think Marjorie's perspective, and we get a splash of other people here and there, like Jaime, but he's gone now. So.
Yeah. It's like the Sparrow. When we see things from the Sparrow sort of perspective, it's more like we see what is he up to. It's like we get the cloak and dagger. We get we can try to read into his mannerisms and his plans. With Cersei, it's where we see the plans being made. Yeah, I think that's a distinction to make, even when they're on screen different amounts of times. So I think, we could be up for a really big moment at some point here. If this wildfire thing is real, it's going to be, it could be huge. I mean, devastating. It's hard to predict with something like wildfire. Wildfire is unpredictable, and it may not even be what's happening at all. We might be wrong about the wildfire thing. That might come later or not at all. I think, well, it's going to come at some point. I can't imagine Bran's visions were just not, they didn't matter. So it's got to come up some point. This seems like a pretty likely one, but we'll have to wait and see. Do you have anything more on King's Landing?
Nothing I can
more on
think of.
Cersei or Kevin or Tommen or the High Sparrow? It's funny. The High Sparrow's thoughts and plans and schemes were all over this episode, but he himself did not make an appearance. Okay, let us move onward to Marine, which is actually the last scene. It looks like we're getting through things a little bit faster than usual. That's sometimes what happens with resolution episodes. There's less to discuss because it's the setup is where you've got to think about all these different possibilities. When there's a theory, sometimes you have like 5 different subversions of theory, but when you see the resolution, it's like, that's what happened. That's what we can talk about where we were wrong. Maybe we talk about our thought process, but
there's also been less different storylines being hit on each episode. The first few episodes, we're getting all the different characters, even if it's only 1 or 2 quick scenes, we had so many different things to be talking about. Now we're getting several scenes lasting a little bit longer, but only on fewer characters. So that's less tangents to go off onto. So.
Very true. Okay, so Marine, there's actually a lot going on here. There's a couple different scenes. I guess there's about 3 or 4 different scenes in Marine. Rhyme in there. We start with Varys and Tyrion, and this is very puzzling to me. This is one of those things that's a setup that we don't know exactly where it's going because he's going on some mission, and he mentions how important ships are. So who is he going to? Where is he going? There's very little clue here, so we really have to dig deep and think about it. Couple possibilities. One, if you go back to Arya, and this maybe seemed a little random, Lady Crane says the play is moving on to Pentos next. And Pentos is where Illyrio's manse is. That's where Tyrion and Varys first stopped off when they got to Essos. I don't know why Varys would need to go to Pentos specifically in order to do this secret mission, because it sounds like it has something to do with Westeros. It's like Dany's going to need allies, blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to bank that he's doing something to do with getting a navy. And
he said, there's 2 things he said. He said, we need friends in Westeros and we need ships.
Yeah.
Now, he might be able to do both those things in Westeros. He might be able to go to Westeros and go to the Iron Islands, and that might be pretty good.
Yeah.
If he shows up in the Iron Islands and says, hey, we need 1,000 ships. Like, oh, really? I got 1,000 ships. I was heading your way. That could all come together. But maybe he's going to go somewhere else to get ships and go to Westeros to make allies with King's Landing. Who knows?
It could be just some completely unknown third party. That would be a little cheap. I think it makes more sense to go with what's been put out there already. So I agree with you that this is very strong chance it has something to do with negotiating with the Iron Islands. And it could relate to Euron, or it could relate to Yara. Damn it. Yara and Theon. And interestingly, I was wondering, Asha and Theon, their arrival at Marine. I wonder, you're wondering when that's going to happen. And maybe, this navy that's assaulting Marine, this could be their way out. Maybe Asha and Theon attack this navy and win, and that brings them into the fold with Dany because they've obviously performed some great service. Seems like the dragon could do a lot of damage to those ships, or the dragons.
Another thing that might be set up here that'd be interesting, maybe a little farther down the road, but if Yara shows up at Marine with her navy, help save the day. Mm-hmm. In the meantime, Varys goes to the Iron Islands to get Euron. Then Euron's like, yeah, let's do this. And they head back. Yeah. And Dany's already made an alliance with Yara. So then you have, that would be an interesting conflict for them having to come to terms with each other, or fighting amongst each other when there's this bigger mission that's more important. I like it's a typical theme, idea. Typical conflict in the show. So
that's a good call. Backing up a little, there's one of the underlying themes to this scene with Tyrion is his loneliness. I think that's a really big, important point here. Varys leaving was kind of a big deal to him, and I think that's partly why he's trying to drink with Missandei and Grey Worm. Is he's lonely. He's got no friends, and he even mentioned that he's like the Imp's Delight. He talks about his making his own vineyard. The Imp's Delight. I would only share it with my closest friends or my good friends or whatever. And he's like, well, who are those? Who are your good friends? Like Bronn, Varys, like these are your friends, huh? You know, you don't really have close friends. You know, your brothers out there, I guess, but you know, those guys are a world apart, and Jaime's more loyal to Cersei than he is to Tyrion by far at this point. Yeah, I don't know. It's that's an interesting underlying theme there is Tyrion's loneliness and his aimlessness in a sense. He's got a purpose. He's got, you know, things to work on, but
it's reinforced by the way it was in the background, but once again, Tyrion presented as a bad guy in the play when what's her name?
Lady Crane.
Lady Crane came back in the background. You hear Tyrion's character come on the stage and, you know, acting villainous. You know what I mean? We saw the crowd reacting to him being a bad guy. It makes me wonder again how things are going to play out when it seems like the public is being portrayed as thinking of him as a villain. His family is going to think of him as a villain. His kingdom, what friends? He's like, you know, considering himself, you know, that he doesn't have close friends. He's not going to be accepted in public. And what if Dany comes back mad at him for this deal that he made? What if he's rejected here too? I don't know if it would go that far, but Tyrion might be in a tough spot.
Yeah. Daenerys says nothing as she enters. She just walks in, the unsullied kneel, and everybody's like, all right, she's back, and Drogon's with her. That's great. Things can happen, so they're reunited. But yeah, there may be a little reckoning for how things have been done in her absence. And, you know, Tyrion points out, well, yeah, I was wrong, you know, etc. It didn't work like I thought it would. You know what? Something makes more sense in retrospect now. We were all very puzzled by, and even to the point where we were coming up with conspiracy theories, the fleet being burned. The Marinese fleet being burned earlier in the season.
Oh,
makes a lot of sense now.
Fleet, so they could attack with their own fleet.
They could attack with their own fleet, and then so they didn't have like they couldn't patrol. That's why they didn't like see it coming. They were caught off guard. Yeah. So that makes a lot of sense. And by the way, that was awesome. The ships and those fire catapults, the flaming fire ship catapult trebuchets things, that was really cool looking. Man, that was like totally unexpected too. Like nothing in the trailers. That did not make even a split second of that in the trailers as far as we saw. So that was just really out of nowhere and very, very cool. It's pretty safe to assume that Daenerys's vast army is lagging behind. You know, she's able to get there a lot quicker, given her dragon and all. So really, who knows what's going to happen now? Dany's plans. There's a lot of ways this can go. She can just try to send her dragons at the ships, and the ships would probably be pretty helpless against that. The Greyjoys could come in and help, and that could be their way to, like you said, that could create all kinds of conflict going forward if Dany was thankful to them and brings them on board, only to have conflict with Euron later. You made me see Euron. I usually say Euron. And so it's really hard to predict where that's going to go. And we've got Missandei and we've got Grey Worm and all these other characters to balance out. We still have, obviously the Harpies are still a major force. Those ships had Harpy sails, you know. So yeah, I'm pretty excited for that. I wonder, but partly because it's one of these things that this season has been full of surprises for book readers because it's well past the books, most of the plot lines. This is a good example of that, with no idea what's coming. And this, amongst all the plot lines, is at this point has become very hard to predict. Dany's arc going north to Vace Dothrak and the Dosh Khaleen, I feel like it had a lot of great points. I'm not saying I didn't like it, but a lot of it was predictable. You know, Dany was never in that much danger. Like, come on, Dany's not going to die, at least not yet. Let's be honest. You know, maybe Dario will. Jorah's got his thing going on. There wasn't much tension around Dany herself, though, and there still maybe isn't a lot of tension around her now. But what's she going to do? Like, I didn't know how she was going to win over the Khalasar, the giant Khalasar, but I felt pretty confident she would. And I'm pretty sure she's going to come out ahead in all this stuff with Marine, but I really don't know how. And it could be really epic. I mean, we could see a lot of dragon action. These navies provide, you know, a lot of visual goodies. So I'm excited about the possibilities.
I do want to say one thing. Tyrion wasn't exactly wrong.
Yeah, you're right.
He wasn't completely right, but there was peace in the city, right?
Mm-hmm.
He didn't anticipate or predict or expect or wasn't able to defend against being attacked by sea from these other cities. Yeah. But part of their concern was the city right now on the streets, the people's safety from being attacked by each other, they at least had peace within their economy and so on. And there was a victory. There was a positive side it wasn't like Tyrion completely screwed everything up.
Right.
You know what I mean? If he hadn't done what he did, this probably still would be happening. You know what I mean? Their
agree.
fleet still got burned. The slave masters from the other cities were still going to come attack. Tyrion just staved it off and got peace in the city for the meantime. So I feel like it's a little easy, a little unfair to like blame this all on Tyrion.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a good point, because what could he have done? Like, had he done something else, you're right. The same thing would have happened, most likely. It's not like they were unprepared. It's not like they were
built
like
1,000 ships. That's what he should have done. All the trees there, marine.
Yeah, it was in the desert near the pyramids there, yeah. So that's very much in the air. I agree with what you're saying, that Tyrion is taking some of the blame, but to be fair, it's not like it would have gone well if they had necessarily done it differently. And Varys pointed out the same thing. Is like, look, it's like saying the razor you used to shave with because it worked once, that it's going to keep working, that it can't cut you now. That was a pretty good way to put it. And I also liked the scene with the jokes. They're trying to make jokes and all. I thought that was pretty cool. Trying to humanize these people that have had hard upbringings. Grey Worm. I thought Tyrion's one line about who's told you the Unsullied can't drink. That was a really good way to make Grey Worm think. It's like, yeah, you're right. Like, why am I obeying that command? The masters gave me that one. And I was amused by anyone who doesn't drink is disrespecting our queen. But, and some people didn't like this. They thought it was a waste of time. But I just thought this really spoke to him being lonely. Like, he's just lonely. He wants people to hang out with and drink with and feel like he's a human being. And he's in a foreign realm with customs and culture he doesn't really understand, which is thrown in his face how wrong he was. Even though, like we said, it wouldn't necessarily gone a lot better if they had done something differently. But he's just really constantly confronted by this, and I think it's interesting and compelling for his character. And he's had a lot less screen time than I think he's had in any other season. So they're trying to maybe get a little, get as much bang for their buck as they can out of such a great actor. And
I could see someone feeling like this is a waste of time. I don't. I'm the other way around. I think that this type of scene should be happening more all over with all the other characters. And given there is so much to do and so many other characters to cover, maybe I can see someone doesn't want the time to be spent on this because they want to have more of some of the thing. But I do want this, and I'll take what I can get, and I wish they did more of this elsewhere. I think this is some genuine acting, genuine characters, genuine interaction between these are real people. They're not just like images with the name going through actions. They're humans with personalities, and that's what's really interesting me. I don't really care how good someone is with the sword or who won the battle from the da-da-da. I want to know how people talk to each other. I want to know how people feel about each other. I want to know people's personalities and characters. And that's what comes out in a scene like this. And I will also say, I've recognized something about myself. I really find it funny when someone is trying to be funny and fails. That's my favorite kind of humor. I love on The Office when Michael Scott makes a joke wrong. Those are the funniest jokes to me. And the one when Miss Sunday told the joke and Tyrion recognizes a bad joke, but he didn't want to discourage the activity, so I was like, ha 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 ha.
Yeah, his laugh was really good. And then Grey Worm's like, that is the worst joke I ever heard.
I thought all that was really well done. It was awkward and it was slow.
It was supposed to be
it was
awkward.
Real life, and I really liked it.
Yeah, you're right. It was very realistic, I think, because they don't Tyrion does not have they have so little in common. And even Varys, I keep calling Grey Worm Varys for no reason at all. Grey Worm and Missandei have a lot in common, but even they have a lot separating them, even though they have so much in common, especially compared to Tyrion. But they all have big differences in their upbringing and lives, even though two of them were brought up as slaves. But yeah, it just goes to show, Tyrion is just it's just hard for him to connect with him. He forgets. He tried to make a joke about Westeros, great houses that just falls completely flat. It's funny to us, but it's the same thing. He's trying to be funny and failing, and it's it just shows where is their common ground? They just have very little struggling. Even humor, that's one thing that a lot of people can, or drinking. Everyone drinks. Every culture has drinking. Not even that. And it's Missandei started to come around on it a little bit. She's like, yeah, actually, this is good. But yeah, and then of course it's interrupted by the fire ships arriving, and It's all real life happens,
Stupid fire ships.
At least they looked really cool. So yeah, really, really good scene. I agree with you there. I like that scene a lot. It was up there, very different than, but similar in a ballpark sort of way to the Edmure Jaime scene, where it was all about acting and the way these people felt and these very believable reasons for the way they feel, which is funny because the show often kind of forgets why people are the way they are. Their motivations sometimes are lost and some details are forgotten. Like you pointed out the whole incest thing. Like, why aren't people talking about that more? Why isn't that part of the trial? Well, I think I gave a pretty good reason for why the High Sparrow doesn't want people to bring that out, but it makes sense that it would be talked about more. So it's cool when they really hone in on these characters' personalities and bring some of that to life and make them more human. Because with some of this plotline rushing, some of the speed with which some of these things happen, they can't spend a lot of time on it. So they have to really, when they do it, it has to really pack a punch, which means you have to have the grit acting. You have to have the strong facial reactions. You have to do that. It has to be done well. And so when we get it, and we got a lot of it this episode, they usually do a good job of it. I think it's a strength of the show, partly because it's cast really well and because these actors are really, really good.
And the characters are distinct and unique. And
yeah,
I mean, think about how many different characters I've said this before. When I make my notes each week, I kind of list out all the characters. There's 50-something characters, and I can imagine some people might think I stretch which names I bother to write down, where other people were like, you didn't even write down so-and-so. Like, I could easily get up to 100 if I was trying. But even if I cut it in half, 25 characters, and this is the currently following characters that we're looking at, as opposed to characters from the past that haven't been around forever because they died or went elsewhere, Ned and so on. They're not just like a face with a name. It's not just the girl with the whip, the girl with the dagger. There's so many characters that have real personalities and thickness to them. They
aren't three people with one personality.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that wraps up our non-spoilery discussion. We will come right back after a quick break, go through our credits, and discuss what's coming up next. We won't just talk about the trailer for the next episode, because the trailer for the next episode is a little narrow. You got something to say?
I did forgot one point I wanted to make.
Okay.
Especially because we're talking about Tyrion and how few allies he has and how things are maybe turning sour for him.
Yeah.
I even had this thought when he's walking with Varys and he goes to the ship. They don't want to be seen together, heading out for the secret mission with the most famous dwarf in the city. I like that line in the world. I like that line a lot. That was cool. And especially kind of contrasts how Tyrion, it's lonely at the top. It's a theme that often is in the show.
Pyramid, right? Too. It's kind of like literally
the
top. That's kind of
But sorry, I was thinking that was a little tangent, good one. But I was worried about his safety. He's just walking around like everyone knows.
Second time that's happened.
I'm worried about that. And maybe there's people, maybe there's guards at a distance, or maybe he's just too bold. Maybe they're more sure about the safety of the city. Once again, we weren't quite sure how long it had been. We knew, I think it was just last episode, they talked about it had been 2 weeks since there had been any incident of violence. So maybe it's been 2 months now.
Yeah.
But my point is, Cersei's bounty, is it still out on his head?
Probably.
You know what I mean?
I mean, she's not in charge anymore, so it's kind of not clear whether they would uphold that. I don't know.
They may not uphold it, but just imagine Cersei said, hey, I'll give you a bunch of money if you bring me this dwarf's head. Yeah. Then Cersei gets locked away. But there's still some dude that's been traveling for 2 weeks in Atlantis that doesn't know what's going on with Cersei. He's just trying to find that dwarf's head. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's a factor at all, but just something I couldn't stop thinking about.
So we'll be right back to discuss the credits and the post-spoiler discussion. So stick with us if you're interested in that. Otherwise, we will see you next week for episode 9, which figures to be very exciting. So if you're checking out now, Valar Morghulis, and we'll see you next time. If not, we'll be right back. Okay. One thing that I also forgot to mention that is neat, in fact, it should have been mentioned last week, maybe even the week before. Last week, probably. Yara and Theon going to Slaver's Bay, showing up in Marine, creates an interesting situation. Tyrion could find out what happened to Sansa.
Yeah.
Through Theon. Yeah. Theon knows that he doesn't know that she's gone north and is teamed up with Jon Snow and all that. He knows that that's where she was going. He doesn't know where things are now, but he knows that she's alive, that she got out of, Winterfell alive. She got escaped the Boltons, blah, blah, blah. I don't even know if Tyrion knows she was with the Boltons. He's probably out of the loop on that because that happened after he fled King's Landing. So he may not know any of that. So that's interesting. Just, it's not a huge plot point because I don't know that he's going to do anything differently because he finds this out. But it's neat to know, it'll make him think, it could be a good acting moment.
It also might be another moment where we get people together that have been on the show since the beginning that haven't interacted, or at least haven't interacted in a long time. I don't think Theon has ever said a word to Tyrion. Can you remember?
No, they have. They interacted at Winterfell in season 1.
Did they? Okay.
Yeah.
I thought that they may have. I just can't remember specifically.
They kind of taunted each other. Theon taunted Tyrion about how his uncles burned the ships at Lannisport.
That's right.
Back in the Balon's Rebellion, and Tyrion fired back with, how'd that go for you? How'd that work out for you? Yeah, nothing like a bunch of screaming men, burning men to like make your day or whatever it was. I think Tyrion came out ahead on that exchange. He threw him the coin and was like,
"That's right."
I slept
the redhead.
I slept with your favorite, prostitute. So but that's about it. So it wouldn't be a fond memory for either of them. But in any case, okay. So thanks to our History of Westeros bards, that would be Joey Townsend for the theme music, Jesse Coel for the cover of the theme music that we use at the end of our episodes. And thanks, of course, to our Patreon supporters. You can become a Patreon supporter by going to historyofwesteros.com and clicking on the Patreon link in the upper right corner, or just go straight to patreon.com/historyofwesteros. Check it out. We've got a lot of different titles, a lot of different rewards. Get episodes early, get your own nickname and title. We come up with the titles for you if you want. You can always use your own if you have one ready, if you want to come up with something. But we can come up with one for you if you want. I'm getting to be an old expert at that sort of thing. Getting a lot of practice in making up cool names. And I enjoy doing it. So, hey, it's win-win. Thanks to First Lord Cash Craig, Hand of the King, Lord of Mines, and Lord of Makers. Thanks to Lord Jim the Fortuitous of Wars and Politics of Ice and Fire blog and Warden of the West. Thanks to Lord George Stormsville the Cunning, Lord of the Chiliad and Warden of the East. Thanks to Lord John Reed of Castle Woodbridge, the Lord Borealis, the Light of the North, and Warden of the North. Much better warden than Ramsay, that's for sure. Lady Kelly McMath of Covington, Lady of the Villa Hills and Crescent Springs, Warden of the South. Much better ruler than Alaria, most likely. Outside the realm, we have Rory the Rogue, Archer Extraordinaire, and King Beyond the Wall. I am quite sure the Hound wouldn't speak to him the way he spoke to the Brotherhood Without Banners Archer. Far more intimidating figure, this Rory is. Our small council, in no danger of being torched by wildfire because they're a much more capable group of people. The Lord James Inkblade, the Scholar Knight, is a master of whispers, far beyond the abilities of Pycelle. Sorry, not Pycelle, but Qyburn. Up there with Varys, I'd say. Grand Maester Saria of the Barrows is Cinder of the Citadel. Let's not even talk about Pycelle compared to Saria here. No, that's not even close. Pycelle is a little ant comparatively. Lord Robert Jacobs is our master of coin. Rosie the Clever is our master of laws. Lord James Tuttle is our master of ships. All of these counselors, we could have used their help with these questions about how the laws work, what's going on with the Crown's finances with regards to the Iron Bank. So many questions that we can't answer. We need experts to weigh in on these things. Also, Lady Direliz of Castle Naki is the Alpha Patron. Lord Dan in the Red Mountains and Castle Great Bell is Breaker of the Second Stone. Lord Skip of the Velt is Lord of Castle Ganges. Cabethian Frozen is Lord of the Bricks and Castle Crimson Light. Gregor the Toasty is Lord of the Bread Fort. Alicia Everlasting of the Green Blood is Lady of Desert Rose. Jeffrey the Unflinching is Lord of Sand Lake. Lord Greybay of the Queen City. Lord Ryan of Castle Stonegate is Guardian of the Rocky Mountain Pass. Lord Garin de Haviland is of Devil's Hand Keep. Lord Brandon Slate is the Norse Hammer and Harbinger of the Old Gods. Lord Mark Joseph is the Snow in Winterfell. Mentioned him earlier. Got that new dragon going. Pretty exciting. Ashlyn Winter is the Hawk's Eye, Lady of Castle Skyfall. Lady Mikkel of Moonacre is the leader of the Werewood Protectorate Alliance. Lady Cachan Valant of Swine Harbor. And last but certainly not least, Lord Barone of Hillcrest is Lord of the Halls, wielder of the Valyrian steel machete, Everglazed. We also have King's Justice, Sir Troy the Study, wielder of the Valyrian steel blade Fate, capable of separating a head from his body in a single stroke. Probably not able to pull it off with his bare hands, but hey, I wouldn't put it past him. Lord Commander Dubbington is the Red Bear, commander of the History of Westeros Kingsguard, which we don't have no idea who the real commander of the Kingsguard is in the show right now. They just they just skip right past that, I suppose. Maybe they'll bring it up at some point, but for now,
Sir Pounce.
Good choice. Very good choice. Maybe Arya will come over and disguise herself as Sir Pounce. And that's how she infiltrates the Red Keep. Hey, she knows a thing or two about cats. And of course, we also have the History of Westeros Night's Watch, commanded by Lord Commander George the Golden. First Ranger Fabian Flowers is the bastard of Greenshield. And our first steward is Dolorous Ronich Cantrell, wielder of the Valyrian Spoon, for the night is dark and full of turnips. Now, I did everything I could to learn how to pronounce that name. We had a little friendly bet, me and Dolorous Cantrell here, because I have no idea how to say the name. I said it wrong the first time. I looked it up. The internet is supposed to fix all these problems. You're supposed to have pronunciation guides, but this name is apparently so uncommon that I could not find a pronunciation for it. So you win the bet. I probably didn't say it right. You're going to have to tell me how to say it so I can not butcher it in the future. As someone whose real name is Abishai Aziz Aldori, I know a few things about having your name butchered. Speaking of names butchered, we are being invaded. At the bottom of our screen, we have the cat I mentioned before, Jakin, the cat of black and white. He is trying to force his way into our screen here. Anyway, so that covers our Patreon supporters and all our shout outs for today. You can get a shout out of your own other ways besides being a Patreon supporter. If you make a donation through PayPal, through our website, ask for a shout out and we'll give you one. That simple. Okay, so next on. Now, it's not just about what's next on, it's what we've been seeing since the preseason trailers that we haven't seen yet. And we know from this next episode, it's all battle. Basically, there may be some before the battle, maybe some after, but we see no indication that there'll be anything other than this conflict in the episode, other than maybe some things before it and some things after it.
The battle at Highgarden?
Yeah, the battle at Highgarden. Yeah. You know, the battle at Winterfell. We see burning crosses, Bolton crosses. We see the armies gather. We see Jon Snow looking real like sad and like not. He just looks out of sorts a bit.
He's been looking that way for the past few episodes, by the way.
Yeah,
I
being dead.
Mentioned that last episode is I feel like he almost always seems slightly uncertain. Does that make sense?
I think this is. Some people have complained that his death, being dead, hasn't had enough of an effect on him, but it hasn't had no effect on him. I think this is exactly what it is.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
I've noticed a difference in his physical presentation.
Yeah, he's more slumpy, slumped over. His shoulders, I think his posture is different. I think it's pretty subtle. And I know sometimes the show doesn't do certain things subtle that it really misses the opportunity to do. But I think this is a good example of something that it is doing so subtly that a lot of people aren't even catching it. So maybe we're wrong. Maybe we're just reading into it. But I both of us seem to agree on this, that there is some things like he does have less intensity, he has less energy.
Yeah, I was trying to identify it. I couldn't quite decide what word to use or how to describe it. But I feel like I was really taking note of it when he was meeting with Lyanna Mormont.
Yeah,
the look on his face, and through that episode, and this one, the previews for the next episode. There's nothing in North this episode, nothing at all, right?
Nothing.
But several images of him in a preview for next week, and he looks. In the past, he definitely also maybe looked uncertain because he was kind of like young and thrust in these situations that he wasn't expecting or wasn't ready for.
Yeah.
But I still want to say he had a bright-eyedness to him. Maybe not bushy-tailed, but he was maybe more positive, you know, like maybe looking to what he can do next. I feel like now the look in his eye is like, someone please help me. Someone please help me. That's the look at like he's in despair. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Uncertainty and forward looking before, whereas now it's uncertainty and despair.
Yeah. And and the situation is really horrible. He thought maybe he was going to be able to go off and be by himself, but he pulled him back in, and it's a bad place to be. He's got a brother, half brother, probably being tortured. He's got his family's in tatters. His own brothers killed him. The White Walkers are coming. I mean, there's not a lot to be positive about, is there? It looks pretty bleak from where he's standing, and he's experienced death. And he maybe thinks he's going back there. And that brings us to one of the few non-battle moments of the trailer, which is him telling Melisandre, whom we haven't seen in a while, if I fall, don't bring me back. He's like, I don't want to come back again. I don't want the barrack treatment. I don't want to be resurrected many times. if I die this time, just let it be. And I'm curious what she's going to say to that.
They need to get Lady Crane in that battlefield. Oh, she's dead. Oh.
Yeah, what do you think? I wonder what will she say to that? She's like, no. Mel's like, no, you're the Lord's chosen.
Yeah,
I got to bring you back. Sorry, bud. If you die, the gods, he comes first. You know, you're his chosen, but I got to follow his lead. You know, like I don't know. I don't know what she's going to say to that.
She might not have a chance to. I can imagine that might be like the end of the conversation.
Yeah.
They might talk for 3 minutes and he says that and walks out.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll be the beginning of the conversation and she convinces him that she does need to bring him back. But
there's also possibility for this reckoning. We see Davos looking down at a pile of what looks to be burned logs, which has gotten a lot of people suspecting, and we've been seeing this shot since the trailers before the season. At first, we thought it had something to do with Jon, because back then we didn't know how the Jon situation would be resolved, but it clearly had nothing to do with Jon. So it might have to do with Shireen, him finding out what happened to her more specifically, you know, and that could cause some conflict. I'm not sure. Regardless, we see him participating in the battle. We see him charging. We see him soar. We see his face dirty as if he's been fighting for a while. We hear him kind of maybe reacting to a horn blow, which means maybe the Vale soldiers are coming in to save the day.
Or the Brotherhood.
Yeah, that'd be neat to see the Hound take out Ramsay, a guy who uses dogs for evil things. So that would be somewhat fitting. And yeah.
It's also possible the battle lasts more than one day.
Sure, it could. I'm kind of guessing it won't, but yeah, absolutely. None of the scenes were night scenes that we saw.
Some of them were dark, though.
Some of them were dark, yes.
Or dusk,
You're right.
Hard to say.
Absolutely.
But you can imagine, like, they have a battle, and at the end of the day, you know, like, regroup, wait for morning, come back again, and in the night, we can have conversations. Davos finds that pyre, whatever else, you know.
Melisandre has visions of herself from a while back, walking the walls of Winterfell. She sees the Bolton banners burning. Could be finally coming around to happen. Apparently, there's a parlay. We hear Jon is saying the voiceover during the trailer. It sounds like he's talking directly to Ramsay, like challenging him to a one-on-one, something like that. He says thousands of men could die. We could just resolve this way. Sounds like he's challenging Ramsay to fight. Don't imagine Ramsay will accept. Ramsay's army is larger. The larger army should not be accepting that sort of deal.
The larger army on the defense as well.
Yeah, with the entrenched position. Yeah. And then we see a lot of action sequences. We see Tormund. We see 1-1, like bringing our archer up, slaying him down. We don't see any Ghost, though. I wonder if Ghost will have a role in the battle. Hard to say. We wonder what the House Mason banner looks like, since House Mason is fighting for the Starks, and they're not a house from the books. So they don't have like a sigil. I wonder if we'll see a sigil for them. It's kind of a small thing, but it's something that I'm curious about. And we also see... we also have the implication of the Vale army coming, but we don't actually see it. We don't see any shots of that actually happening. The horn, again, might be an indication of that happening. And we also have this line from the preseason trailers of, do you like to play games, little man? And we still haven't had that. We still have not had that one, which is it was clearly Ramsay's voice, almost certainly speaking to Rickon. So, like, it seems hard to believe that Ramsay wouldn't do bad things to Rickon, having him tempted. Like, how could he resist? This is Ramsay we're talking about.
And imagine a scenario like what the phrase create for Blackfish there. What if Ramsay literally brings Rickon out in the battlefield with a knife to his throat? Yeah. Like, all right, Jon, call your forces off or I cut his throat. Yeah. What does Jon do? Can Jon do what Blackfish did? Like,
he's dead anyway.
Cut his throat.
I think he can. I think he can. Like, it's even more of a threat for Ramsay to do. It's like, what good would it do to, he's going to kill him anyway. Like, even with Ramsay, you can even be more certain, because Ramsay's Ramsay. And it's like, this guy's already, the things he's threatened to do to Sansa, the things he's threatened to do to, I think he's already done.
On one hand, Rickon might be better off if Ramsay just kills him.
Yeah, he won't be
tortured. But on the other hand, what if that's a threat? What if he brings him out in a battlefield and says, all right, Jon, call your forces off. We're going to chop off his finger. Chops off. Rickon screaming and crying and bleeding is like, all right, next finger, Jon. How long can Jon stand there and watch Rickon get mutilated to death?
I could see that being more likely, and I could also see him just being dead already and being on one of those crosses as a way to taunt him, and say, just to throw him off his game, to make him, bereft and just
feeling
horrible, which is not the right state of mind when you have to be leading soldiers and giving commands and being confident. And,
you might like boost up his anger and his emotion and his personal fighting ability, but his value as a leader would be diminished.
Yes, and it could also just be Ramsay just likes that sort of thing. He just gets off on seeing people suffer and on knowing the psychological torment that they're clearly enduring based on the feelings that normal people have that he doesn't have, but he knows they have them, so he knows how to play on that. Another scene that is not related at all to this that we haven't seen yet. In the preseason trailers, there's a shot of a bunch of Sons of the Harpy. Some of them are on the ground and they kind of look up and it looks like they might be on sand. It looked like a rehash of, it almost looked like a scene from the fighting pits from last season. But clearly that's not going to happen. I can't imagine we're going to like the fighting pits in this final episode, which will almost certainly be episode 10, not episode 9, because again, 0 scenes that weren't from this northern battle or related to it. So I don't think we're going to get anything till episode 10, but it's kind of scares me. At least it won't be Varys. I was worried that Varys would be killed. Clearly not going to happen in the short term. Not at Marine anyway. He seems to be gone.
Second episode without Bran also, right?
Yeah, he was last in episode 6. He hasn't been seen since episode 6.
Yes.
And so we got to see some Bran in episode 10. Maybe we'll get some trailer shots at the end of episode 9. We might not be seeing Sam again this season. That could be. We might get one shot or two, like we'll follow up, see what's going on, a little resolution, or at least to give us a clue as to what they're doing, because it's kind of it's more of a cliffhanger. It's not really a cliffhanger, but it's like what are they doing? Where are they going?
A lot of stuff.
Is he still going to Old Town?
Yeah.
So it looks kind of grim for the chances of seeing Old Town this season. We could see it, but it seems like if we do, it'll be a real glimpse, real brief. But all hope is not lost there. But
I meant to mention this earlier. They did leave us on a bit of a cliffhanger in Marine there, just like battle's going on. Danny shows up.
Yeah. What's happening?
Nothing. Yeah.
She doesn't even speak. So, yeah. And the other dragons are still like Tyrion let them off their chains, but we haven't gotten back to that. They're just free, but still not free. They're just less trapped than they were.
Who's to say if they let them go, they might do as much damage to Marine as to Marine's enemies. Who knows what they would do at this moment.
It might be like a gamble that they're like, well, we're in big trouble. Hopefully this works out for us. Let the dragons out.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll attack the ships.
They might fly alongside. If Danny's riding Drogon, they may like join in flanks. And if he goes and attacks the ships, they'll go with him.
Follow the leader, follow their big older brother, larger brother. They're kind of sexless. Follow your older sisters, brothers, Souther. Yeah. Anyway, it's hard to come up with a name for an androgynous dragon. We'll have to work on that.
Are they specifically androgynous? Is that ever referred to?
It's not said in the show. It hasn't been referred to at all. But in the books, it's kind of been explained that they're sort of like real world certain species of frogs and fish that can actually change their sex at need based on what's around them, based on like the population around them. They're kind of not asexual, but androgynous. They can switch sexes. There's real life. That's a real world thing that can really happen. And so it's kind of sort of explained that way. It's not totally clear. It's like it seems to be the case. It's not sure.
It's occurred to me it's I can't remember if they've ever been specifically referred to as him or her.
They have not. Yeah, Drogon is kind of referred to as a male, but it's not like Danny is checked under the hood there to see. He's like got a big dragon schlong hanging out there. We did see a hound schlong this episode, but it was real brief. Peeing in the water there. Okay, so we'll go pee in our own water now and call this episode adieu. Thanks for checking in with us again. It was a real fun review today. We had maybe less to talk about, but we had a lot of fun with it. Got real hype about certain great acting moments. And we're looking forward to the last 2 episodes of the season. Maybe we'll do one of these last 2 episodes live. Probably the last one. We'll consider very strongly doing it live. Give us your feedback on that. Maybe we'll take some questions during that, or maybe we'll do a postseason episode to wrap things up and do the questions then. That might fit better. We'll think about it. We'll marinate on that one over the course of the next 2 weeks. And you all let us know what you prefer. Write us at westeroshistory@gmail.com. You can always message us on Facebook. We're at History of Westeros on Facebook. You can send us tweets at Westeros History. And of course, you can also join us on Patreon and send us messages there as well. So lots of different ways to get in contact with us. So I guess that's it. Do you have anything else, Sean?
I think that's it.
All right, great. Well, good show this week. Good show as usual. We will be back next week at the same time to break down the big old battle. Wonder who's going to live and who's going to die. I'm worried about 1-1. I'm a little worried about Tormund, but I feel like Tormund's a survivor. I think he's going to get through this one. What about you?
I don't want to think about it.
Okay, all right. We'll just wait and see.
I guess we should have probably talked about it a little bit more right before trying to wrap up. Like, oh, by the way, who we think is going to die in this battle? And I have a feeling that the main character is going to live through it. That's kind of my guess, is that Jon, Tormund.
What about Ramsay? You think Ramsay's going to live, right? I think he's doomed. I think he's dead.
I don't know. I'm not
maybe
sure
not right away, but I think he died. I think he probably dies in this next episode, but maybe not. We'll see. Anyway, send us your guess. Send us your circumstances. If you think he's going to die, send us the circumstances that you think he'll die. Who's going to kill him? Think it'll be Jon? Think it'll be Ghost? Think it'll be 1-1? Think it'll be Tormund? Think it'll be Sandor? Rickon? Could be a lot of possibilities. So let us know your thought. Davos, another possibility.
Brienne,
maybe. Sure. Hopefully not. Podrick. Oh yeah. Let's see. There's tons of possibilities here. So send us your guess. And if anyone comes up with something clever that few other people say, we'll give you a shout out for being clever, for mentioning something that no one else thought of, which is something we usually do. Okay. I'm rambling. We'll see you all next time. Valar Morghulis, Valar Rambulis, Valar Battle of the Bastardus. Adios, folks. See you next time.
Bye-bye.